my name is Rob Whiteley. I'm a VP of Marketing here at F5, and I'm going to be spending a few minutes today talking to Nginx from African Bank. It's a great story about using technology in the financial services industry, and I think you'll enjoy seeing some of the results that African Bank has had investing in Nginx and F5 technologies. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So Nginx, maybe you could just say a few words and introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi, Rob. Thank you for having me here. My name is Nginx, and I'm a site reliability engineer at African Bank.
Great. Thank you. And where are you dialing in from today? Where do we have you located?
I'm in sunny South Africa in Johannesburg at the moment.
Excellent. Well, thank you for taking the time. I think what I would like to do is start broad with a couple of questions, and then maybe we'll get into the technology a bit later. But if you don't mind me starting, digital transformation is a broad topic. Just curious, what does it mean for you and what does it mean for African Bank?
I think site reliability engineering and digital transformation fit hand in glove. Previously, before companies embarked on large transformations, we would have silos in infrastructure or in development or in front-end design and things like that. With digital transformation and site reliability engineering, it's really about breaking down those silos. It's really about putting power and enablement into the development team so that they can do their best work. And it really sticks with us at African Bank as well. Our aim for site reliability engineering is to enable the development teams and the infrastructure teams to do their best work. And that's really what it's all about.
That's great. Thank you. I love the theme of empowerment. I do think a lot of what we've seen that's different in this particular time is the need to innovate and get to market quickly. Maybe one of the things you could do a little bit, could you describe a little bit about African Bank and what African Bank's mission is?
Sure. African Bank's mission is really to bring equitable access to people in South Africa. It's a company that believes that retail banking or having a bank account should be a right and not a privilege. And then that's what we're trying to build, and that's what we've been focusing on building since 2015.
Excellent. So what are some of the challenges that your industry is facing today? And then maybe a little bit about if any of that's changed because of the pandemic we're in.
Sure. I think the industry itself, especially the retail banking space in South Africa, is facing a lot of disruption. So in South Africa, we have 5 incumbent banks who've been around for as long as I can remember. And they've been facing a lot of digital disruption over the past few years, African Bank being one of them. And that's really accelerated during the pandemic because instead of going into a brick and mortar bank facility and speaking to a consultant, you're now looking to do more things online. So instead of changing that during the pandemic, it's really accelerated digital adoption on all levels.
Yeah, that's great. I know I've heard some companies say they've managed to get things done in the last few months that would have taken perhaps a year or longer because of that accelerated pace. So I certainly empathize with the work you have from a site reliability engineering perspective to keep that all running.
Absolutely. I mean, seeing the adoption rates we're seeing on all digital platforms, from retail banking to online shopping and that kind of thing, it's really unprecedented. The pandemic has really accelerated that growth.
So we've talked a little bit about digital transformation. We've talked about some of the challenges in the current environment. Let's switch gears a little bit now. Who on your team was responsible for selecting the F5 and Nginx technologies for the bank? And what problem was it you were trying to solve?
This implementation of Nginx really started as a greenfields project by 2 of my colleagues, Finton Wilson and Clinton Fung. And they decided to look at a microservices architecture and look at Nginx specifically and build out a proof of concept to see how this would actually work in a practical sense. At the time, they were looking at building a retail bank from scratch, and they have since succeeded, spoiler alert. So what they did was build a proof of concept using the Fabric module in the Nginx microservices reference architecture, and they took that to our architecture review board. Since then, we've implemented Nginx Plus, and we've used it as a proxy. We've also used it for routing. We've used it for authentication, and all of these things are stored as code. So this implementation of Nginx is really started off as a greenfields proof of concept sort of project, and is now what we use to manage or host our retail banking offering, our entire retail banking offering for African Bank. Nginx gave more flexibility, and that's one of the reasons why we chose to go with Nginx. And part of the problems that we were trying to solve was the deployment time. So the deployment times traditionally used to be about anywhere between 3 to 6 months. And that meant we could only get features out to our customers very, very slowly. And the deployment window was also could anywhere be between, a couple of hours to a full day to deploy. And we were really looking to solve those problems in a flexible manner and in also a more efficient manner than it was before. So we really embodied those principles and got them in from the get-go. And now we're using them today, and it's business as usual.
So part of what I'm hearing is there was a time to market benefit. There was a sort of a time savings and efficiency on internally as well. If I could kind of broadly categorize what I just heard you say, which is great. So it was great to connect to microservices. Is it possible to talk a little bit about what the technologies are? I mean, you don't have to name products, but just in terms of what that was actually implemented, or how much of it was implemented, or any of the details around that you might be comfortable sharing?
So we're using the Nginx microservices reference architecture, specifically the Fabric model, and it's deployed in 2 ways. The first way is as an ingress controller into Docker Swarm, and the second way is as a direct connection to each of our microservices. And our estate is managed, or our orchestration tool is Docker Swarm, and they're running all Docker containers.
Yeah, and I know you all have been an early pioneer in the Fabric model and in the microservices reference architecture. So it's great to know that little extra detail. The next question is around benefits. I know we touched on that briefly already, but curious, is there any benefit that you've been able to demonstrate either to your customers or internally to employees as a result of your Nginx and F5 investment?
So the benefit to our employees, and I'll start there, is basically that all our configuration for Nginx is stored as code. And it really then puts the enablement or the empowerment that I was talking about earlier back to the developers, where they can bring up an instance quite quickly, and they don't have to rely on other teams to do the things that they need to do on our estate. If they need to test something out, it's quite easily accessible for our development teams. And that's really great. And we've seen that benefit really realized in the development teams. The other things that I've also talked about that's now, really, really good for the development teams is a reduction in the time to deploy, which means we can get more features out to customers on a shorter release cycle. And we've also reduced the window in which we deploy from, hours to hour, and that kind of thing. So that's really taken time for the developers then to not focus on something like a deployment and focus on more meaningful work that's actually contributing value to the customers rather than just doing a deploy. And on the customer side, I touched on it earlier about equitable access to retail banking. And that's one of the things that African Bank embodies and strives to do. And we've really seen that with this offering, it's bringing people who have never traditionally had a bank account now a bank account. So Nginx has been part of that journey, part and parcel of that journey. And it's really helped us realize the ultimate end goal of being able to introduce this retail offering to customers. So when they open the banking app, they don't necessarily know it's running with Nginx Plus. You're kind of heroes behind the scenes.
Love it. That's a good characterization, and that was a great answer. I think you did a great job of summarizing the internal and external benefit. There's almost two kind of customers. There's the developers themselves, and there's the end customers. So it was kind of great to get both angles. Okay, so let's wrap up by just touching on if you can describe how this implementation has helped either transform or better African Bank in any way, shape, or form.
For the development teams, it's really been great and reduced the amount of toil that they've had to put in. By having a reduction in deployment time and deployment window, they can then focus on the things that are important for our customers, and getting those things out to our customers a lot sooner has been really beneficial. So there has been some digital benefits or technology benefits, and there's also been some cultural benefits that we've realized by adopting a microservices architecture and using Nginx as a partner and that kind of thing.
So that's a great story, and I appreciate you getting some of the detail. So what's next for African Bank and some of the things that are on your horizon?
At African Bank, over the next year, we're looking at increasing the stability and robustness of the platform, and also increasing our monitoring of the platform with an implementation of Nginx controller. And in addition to that, we're also looking at faster feature deployment. How do we get features and products out to our customers a lot quicker?
So maybe you could explain a little bit about site reliability engineering and what that means to you or to the bank.
I think site reliability engineering really fits into DevOps, which is a more common word that's used across the tech industry. And the practice is really about looking at scalability, reliability, and performance of your systems. Oftentimes, when you're looking at just app development or feature development and infrastructure stability, or infrastructure development or infrastructure as code, there's not really a single person whose job it is to look at how scalable your system is up and down, how reliable your system is, and what your system performance is for the end customer. And that's where the practice really comes in. And especially in financial services, it's important to have reliable services because you're dealing with individuals' money. So my job is really to look at how we can get the system more predictable, we can get the system easier to scale, and we can get the system more reliable in terms of deployments and in terms of uptime and things like that.
Well, excellent. Thank you for all of that detail. I think we heard a lot of great ways that Nginx, both Plus and Controller, are helping African Bank. You talked a lot about the microservices reference architecture and how we're helping with both the ingress and some of the proxying into the microservices. I know African Bank has been a phenomenal partner in developing what we do call the fabric model. So it's great to hear those benefits around time savings, around some of the productivity and feature velocity. So I think it's just a great overall story about how banks can invest in technology to not only help customers, but also help internally. You even touched on culture transformation, which is really, I think, key to all of this. So excellent story overall. Really appreciate your time, Nginx. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And if you'd like to learn more about microservices or how Nginx and F5 can help, you can certainly head over to f5.com or nginx.com. Thank you.